In 1981, there were two innovations in telephony that were being celebrated and expanded. The first was the number 4 ESS, the Bell System's proudest achievement, the first of which was installed in Chicago in 1976 on the bicentennial. That's how important they thought it was. This was their first major switch that had no moving parts. It had entirely time division multiplex, and everything that went through it was digitized. The other modern wonder of the time was CCIS, Common Channel Interoffice Signaling. This was a way of sending data that previously had been sent by using tones. Traditionally in the long-distance network, the number you were calling was sent by MFs. This had been taken advantage of by phone freaks with blue boxes, who used those tones to make free long-distance calls. CCIS was the first system that was going to replace the use of those tones on long-distance trunks, and this was purportedly going to put an end to phone phreaking. What it actually did, however, is a little more complex. In this program, I'm going to present a time capsule of how the network was in the early 1980s and the impact that CCIS really had on phone phreaking possibilities. CCIS eliminated not only MFs but 2600 signaling, making it impossible on a CCIS trunk for a phone phreak to use 2600 to reset it, whistle it off, so to speak. CCIS was something that we actually saw in the oil company network, although they may not have called it that. Here's an example of a call going through very quickly thanks to CCIS. Now all this is the dial-up number, but notice how fast it goes through from the moment I dial the last digit of the authorization code. There you go. And that is comparable to the way the Bell Systems network was handling most calls between major cities at the time. Here's an example from the Bell Systems network. I'm going to be dialing from a number 1 ESS line in Atlanta, which goes out on the Atlanta 4E, number 4 ESS that is. This goes to Phoenix, where there is also a 4E. The carrier noise comes on almost immediately because there's no need to pause for the MFing of a number or even the regular handshake.
Mountain Bell time 9:59. Downtown temperature 72.
Now, if you blew 2600 on that connection, nothing would happen because there's nothing listening. Now, the trunk between Atlanta and Phoenix is the same trunk that used to operate with 2600, but not anymore. Now, it and many trunks all have their data sent over a common channel, so there's no need for the tones.
Downtown temperature 72.
That was the sound of the call hanging up, and there was no 2600 cheap, like in the good old days. But there was analog long-distance carrier noise, like the good old days. Notice I didn't say anything about an innovative new fiber optic digital network, providing connections so quiet you could hear a pin drop. That's because it hadn't happened yet. In the early 80s, we still had the same old analog L-carrier and microwave trunks. The only difference was that the longest distance part of the call would go through very quickly, so that as soon as you hit the toll network, the carrier noise would come on fast, like this. And when the call hung up, there'd be no 2600 cheap.
The time is 3:20. Temperature 45.
Here's a call to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Notice how old-fashioned it sounds. This carrier noise is, hypothetically, the same sound that the carrier used to have while it was in the answered, off-hook talking state. Because now there are no 2600s or 2600 filters on it.
Communication by telephone is fast, accurate, and economical. Time 8:13.
Talk about old-fashioned. Well, the point is, the same old carrier noise is there, It's the old sound of the answered carrier trunk, except that the 4Es have a way of changing the EQ, so it doesn't quite sound as good. It's kind of unpleasant, has kind of a resonance around 200 hertz quite often.
Northwestern Bell time 3:16.
Hear how it kind of goes doop? So it is not exactly the same as the old trunks being off hook and in the talking state, but that's only because the analog to digital converter that is used to interface that old-fashioned carrier trunk into the digital 4E has really bad EQ characteristics. So CCIS made it possible for the old long-distance trunks to be used without 2600 or MF, but it was only used between offices that had electronic control, such as 4Es, number 1 ESS when used as tandems, DMS 200s, and so forth. The only exception to this was the 4A crossbar switch, which also worked with CCIS. But in the early 80s, there were still number 5 crossbar tandems, NX1 tandems, step tandems in the network. And with few exceptions, the trunks connecting those to the rest of the network that used CCIS were still 2600 operated. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, by 1983, which is what you just heard, apparently was T-carrier. But it was dial pulse operated. Took a long time to go through, despite the first link being CCIS from Atlanta to Albuquerque. Now here's a call to Monticello, Minnesota. In 1983, the first link will be from Atlanta to Minneapolis using CCIS.
Now is the time. Ask about best interest checking at Security Federal. The time is 3:12. Temperature 48.
Now when that hung up, we did hear a cheep, but just one. Before CCIS, that would have been cheep, 2 cheeps. So the trunk from Minneapolis to the destination NX1 that served out of is still 2600 operated. The Atlanta to Minneapolis trunk is not. What this means is if a freak had a blue box and tried to use it, he would not be able to control Minneapolis because Minneapolis would not respond to the 2600. He would be able to control that NX1, and how useful that is depends on what the NX1 does when you give it numbers that he wanted to call. For example, if he wanted to call something in another part of the country, would the NX1 accept that? If it is a tandem office, it might. So the effect of CCIS was to eliminate the ability to use a blue box on intercity calls between major cities. But that secondary link between a major city and somewhere out in the sticks was still 2600 controlled. And if you were interested in playing with one of those little tandems, such as an NX1 tandem or a Crossbar 5 tandem, you could. Here's another CCIS call to a time served out of a step that homes on a Crossbar 5 tandem. You'll notice at the end of the call a single cheep. This again goes through Minneapolis.
You get top quality insurance from the Swift County Insurance Agency. Time 3:14. Temperature 45.
On that call, there was a single 2600 link between Minneapolis and that Crossbar 5 tandem that we heard the call go through. If you used a 2600, you would reset the Crossbar 5 tandem, and you would be able to try MFing into that. You might be able to call just the local area, or maybe the whole country, depending upon that particular tandem's idiosyncrasies. In the CCIS world, as late as 1983, you could still encounter calls that went through two 2600 links beyond the first CCIS link. Here's a call to Snowflake, Arizona that starts out on CCIS, but ends up on two 2600 controlled links. It goes from the Atlanta 4E CCIS to Phoenix, which then uses a 2600 link to a really interesting sounding tandem in Holbrook, Arizona, which then uses another 2600 link to go to the end office in Snowflake. The tandem in Holbrook, Arizona sounds like it's the same type as San Juan Tandem K, which we had a call to in Long Distance Program 15. Because after it receives the number, there is a lone audible dial pulse digit, then silence, and then an unusual cut-through click before you hear the ring. Dig this timely message the phone company is giving for the 1980s.
If you share your line with others, be a good party line neighbor. The time is 10:12.
Now that is the sound of two 2600 links going on hook. And of course, the first long-distance link from Atlanta to Phoenix doesn't use 2600. So if you blew 2600 on this call while it was going through, you would reset the link from Phoenix to that interesting sounding tandem in Holbrook. Now before CCIS, that was hard to do, because a 2600 tone would simply have reset the Phoenix tandem. So CCIS made it easier to explore these little tandems in the network. And there was another very noteworthy effect of CCIS, having to do with the old phone phreak practice of SF'ing. SF'ing is controlling a distant switching machine using beeps of 2600 in the same format as rotary dial pulsing. For the digit 1, it's 1 beep, 2 is 2 beeps, 0 is 10 beeps. I'm making a call to Charlottesville, Virginia, a place that I can SF the step tandem of, not because of CCIS, but because Atlanta has direct trunks.
The number you have reached is not a working number.
Here's a vacant level in the main step.
The number you have reached is not a working number. Please consult your directory or dial directory assistance. This is a recording in Charlottesville, Virginia. The number you have...
973 is a centerized step on the north side.
The number you have reached is not a working number. Please consult your directory or dial for directory assistance. This is a recording in Charlottesville, Virginia.
977 is a rare find, a number 5 crossbar in the middle of an independent company, Centel. It does a supervision handshake when you hit the trunks on 77.
I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your directory assistance operator. This is a recording in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. This is a DDD equipment recording in Charlottesville, Virginia. Please check the number and dialing instructions and try your call again. If you need assistance, dial your operator.
This is where the TSD sends callers when it wants to give them an intercept recording. It goes to the step tandem. No, that's not going to reset. And it dials 80 to get that. While you can get the DDD intercept recording, SF'ing through that step tandem, you cannot go out to the rest of the world. And that was the case with SF'ing through almost every step tandem during the 1970s. So you could SF if you wanted to, but for the most part it was only useful for exploring the particular, rather limited long-distance sector of a particular step tandem such as Charlottesville, Virginia, or Augusta, Georgia, as I showed you on Long Distance Program 14. But prior to early 1971, that was not the case. In the late 1960s, Joe Ingressia became infamous making free phone calls for other students at a college in Florida using only his ability to whistle. In those days, there were major tandems in the domestic network that operated on SF. That's just dial pulse using 2600 signaling. Joe could just whistle anywhere he wanted to go. The last one of these, to my knowledge, that could be used for free to call nationally just by whistling 2600 was the main tandem in Halifax, Nova Scotia, area code 902. And so it was very useful for phone freaks. That changed in early 1971 when Halifax installed a 4A crossbar switch with its famous recording ID.
This is a recording, 9021.
9021. Well, those of you who understand the structure of the old network know that that's not really allowed. The recording ID was changed shortly thereafter, and as Joe Ingressia said, I would like to have heard the phone call where AT&T informed them that they, that tiny little 4A in Halifax, are not a regional center, and so they cannot call themselves 9021. But in any event, the Halifax 4A...
9024.
Much better. The installation of the Halifax 4A was the end of phone freaks being able to dial up a number and just whistle a call to anywhere in North America for free. That's when it ended. You know what CCIS did? It brought it back. During either 1980 or 1981, Joe himself demonstrated whistling a call, which he knew he could do thanks to CCIS. And how did this happen? Well, it all centers around a region of the United States that defies classification. Where do you think this recording is coming from?
I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording.
The number?
The number you have reached is not in service at this time.
Please hang up?
Please hang up and dial your operator.
The number you have dialed has been changed or discontinued. Please consult your directory or dial your operator.
Directory? Changed or discontinued?
I'm sorry, we are unable to...
We are unable to?
We are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and...
Please check the number?
Please check the number and dial again or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording.
This is a recording.
This is a recording. 6182.
Southern Illinois. There's no place like it. You know, I'm very sensitive to the vibe of a place, and I've driven through there many times, and it does not feel like the rest of Illinois. Southern Illinois, the 618 area, traditionally, had a long-distance network that was unlike any other NPA, and not surprisingly, you could hear it. This call is from 1977. It's from my East Side Crossbar 5 line. It goes out on Forest Hills
21233
to St. Louis 1,
3141.
to Marion, Illinois,
6185.
to a Crossbar 5 tandem in Cairo, Illinois, to a step in Mounds, Illinois.
a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again.
Now, if you were to play me this phone call without the phone number, I would know that it was from the 618 area. It's the only place where you could hear this. So let's just analyze this call from the end forward. First of all, last of all, this.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Is the Illinois Bell announcer that we have heard on many recordings through the 1970s. So this is Illinois Bell Intercept. Now, the office that is getting Intercept is... well, that is obviously a Bell System small step CDO. It's the slightly newer kind that has that kind of a ring.
We're sorry.
How did we get there? That's a Crossbar 5 tandem dialing on an N3 family trunk to the step. So we are definitely in the Bell system. Now, how did we get to that Crossbar 5 tandem? Let's see. What the?
Excuse me.
Yeah. No. This is not possible. We are in the Bell system, and we had a Crossbar 5 tandem going to the step, but we got to it through... a GTE-owned senderized step tandem?
6185.
Let's take it from the beginning now. That's Forest Hills. St. Louis 1. Okay, that's a step tandem with a sender dialing 2 digits to set up the route. And now it's going to wait for a flash and MF the 7-digit number to a Bell System Crossbar 5 tandem. And AT&T actually set up the homing chain that way. They had to admit that there were two very powerful tandems, one in Olney,
6184.
the other in Marion, Illinois.
6185.
Both step, both senderized, both class 3 in the long-distance network. Marion had one Bell System Crossbar 5 tandem in Cairo homing on it, and other independent step tandems. Here's a call to Macedonia, Illinois. It goes from my east side line to Forest Hills,
21233.
St. Louis 1,
3141.
Marion,
6185.
which then dials 2 digits to set up the route to the Benton Independent Step Tandem, and then it dials 7 more digits through the Benton Tandem to arrive at a step in Macedonia. There was even another senderized step in Carbondale, which homed on Marion. And Olney had independent steps homing on it as well. So Marion and Olney were very prominent, and it made 618 completely unlike any other long-distance area. Now, internationally, senderized step tandems are very common. The UK network of the 1970s was almost all senderized step tandems. But in North America, not so. The CAMA systems in both Bell and independent companies were a form of senderization.
Your number, please. 472-2906.
But only on the outgoing side. Calling into these various step tandems that had CAMA systems for outgoing calls, you only had direct control. There was nothing smart. If you blew it off and started SF'ing away, you would just be talking to the step switches. No senderization. Homing a crossbar 5 tandem on a direct control step tandem probably could have been done, but in practice it never was. But here with Marion senderized, it was done. Here's Villa Ridge, Illinois, via Forest Hills, St. Louis 1, Marion, Cairo.
Hello?
Pardon the ring. Marion and Olney have given me many fond memories as a former phone freak. For one thing, they just sounded cool, as you've been hearing. They received MF from the rest of the world, and we did MF into them quite a bit. The register senders were not only nice enough to let you hear the outpulsing, but they would accept up to 14 digits. The toll network as a whole only worked with up to 11 digits. But for some reason, Marion and Olney would accept 14, and in some cases you could actually hear Marion and Olney MFing 14 digits. The code 161, for example, was designed to go to Springfield, but you could add 11 digits after it, and Olney would send them all. How do you like that, Springfield?
We're sorry, your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try your call again? This is a recording 2172. We're sorry, your call did not go through.
You think? I wonder why.
We're sorry.
Oh, don't apologize. That was great. Another thing these things were able to do was stack. Now that was something I discovered. My method was to give Marion or Olney a routing code followed by just one digit. I'm going to reset a trunk to Olney. I have to use guardband because there's not a direct 2600 link. And I'm going to key 025, the code for Marion, plus another digit, 1. There. Olney sent a key pulse and has now dumped us into a Marion trunk. You can even hear the trunk noise change. And Marion is now waiting for digits. Olney just stacked into Marion.
I'm sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check your number and try again. 26185. I'm sorry, your call cannot be completed.
So when you hear this, it means Marion or Olney has been sent one digit after a routing code, and it just stacked. More on this later. There was one more point about Marion and Olney. They not only accepted MF, but also SF. So if you could get onto a Marion or Olney trunk, you didn't need an MF device. You could whistle or use an SF dial or whatever to make calls go through to anywhere in North America. Now let's try that during the 1970s. I'm going to call Mounds, Illinois. This does go through Marion, and when the call's gone through, I'll whistle it off and try SFing. Geez, so much New York crosstalk, unrelated to the long-distance call, but can tell we're calling from New York. Anyway, here comes the SF attempt.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Uh-oh. You hear that tick? And this ticking? This is not going to work.
I'm sorry. Your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try again? This is a recording. 3141.
Oh boy. Yeah, that is the St. Louis 1 for A, which of course is what's going to reset if we blow 2600 on this call through Forest Hills, because the first 2600 controlled link is from Forest Hills to St. Louis. Forest Hills communicates to St. Louis via MF, not SF, and St. Louis doesn't take SF on these trunks, and 4As in general use MF exclusively whenever they can. We would have this same problem if we were trying to do this from Long Island, or from Atlanta, or really from anywhere except someplace closer to southern Illinois. Now, you can reset the trunk with guardband, but SF'ing with guardband is pretty much impossible. Guardband is a technique where you use two tones so that the 2600 is not heard by St. Louis, but will still be heard by the link beyond, in this case, Marion or Olney. And doing that is a very delicate operation. You can forget about Joe Ingressia and his whistle, because as talented as he was, he could not whistle two tones, one at 2600, the other at around 3150, with the perfect volume ratio so as to make St. Louis hear the 3150 and Marion not hear it. Whistling two high tones at once is hard enough, if not impossible. So,
I'm sorry.
there's no way to SF for free in the 1970s, despite the fact that these two tandems, if you could ever get there for free on a direct trunk, would let you do it. But you know, before we give up, we ought to try the 800-851 office code, because that is the code for the 618 area, and there have to be some customers in Marion and Olney. So let's call the inward watts test 800-851-0051, and we'll get a recording telling us what tandem handles the 618 in watts.
St. Louis in watts test 325 and 851.
Okay, never mind. Sorry I asked. But fast forward to 1981, when CCIS has taken over almost all of the major intercity trunk groups. Now what do you think will happen? In fact, let's dial a toll-free 800-851 number serving a customer who is in the Olney area, and then let's try whistling it off after it starts to ring. If I get a flash, I'll try SF'ing a busy number in Ben's office in New York. Boy, do I know this busy signal. It works. First time ever that I can call nationally using SF only, and if I'd called Ben himself and he answered, it would have been free. See, I met Bill in April 1971, so I just missed Halifax. It was there, but I hadn't figured out myself what to do with it. How about a call to a Crossbar 5 in Montreal? Got an answer there, but I can call back. By the way, that went through a new DMS 200 tandem in the Montreal area that didn't used to be there. And so you got to hear the MFs because the DMSs in the early 80s allowed you to hear the receive path while they were MFing out. And if you were calling a crossbar 5, that would reflect the tones right back to you so you heard them. So this was during that time when you were actually hearing MFs in the network more than during the 70s. Sort of a fun phase we went through. Anyway, hold on a second. Hello? Is this Bell Labs? Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm one of the phone freaks. Maybe you've heard of us? Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to thank you guys for CCIS. No, really. Well, you see, thanks to CCIS, now I can call anywhere in the country I want using just beeps of 2600. You know how that works, right? Oh, yeah, we can. And you know what else? My friend Joe can just whistle. He doesn't even have to use any equipment. Oh, I'm not going to say where, but I'll give you a hint. It's a place where all the tandems have recordings. Okay, just kidding. Just kidding. That's just the sort of thing Ben and I would not have done. After those newsletters like TAP came out, we were just totally quiet, just shut up and record the network for posterity. That's pretty much what we did. And here are some more of the SF calls that I made through Olney in April 1981. This and the next call are to New York City. First, to the mass calling 976 code, formerly known as 936. And after this, I'll start from scratch and call Ben's exchange.
There is no charge for this call. You have reached a non-working number in the 976 exchange. Please call 976-1000 for all dial-it services numbers. That's 976-1000. Thank you.
Notice that on those calls to the 212 area, there was an alternate route going on. That's one of the nice things about these common control step tandems. They actually can alternate route. You heard it try to get a trunk and get a reorder, and then try a different trunk route. The main outgoing toll trunks, by the way, are on level 1. If you whistle it off for too short a time, you end up dropping the director and pulsing a 1 onto the switching train.
And the flash you get is not from Olney, but from Collinsville, and let me demonstrate that.
I whistled off in order to stop that 800 number from ringing, but watch what a short whistle-off does. Cluck-clunk, cheep-cheep. What that did is it dropped the register sender out, because short flashes often do that in senderized step, but it also dialed a 1, and 1 is Collinsville.
We're sorry your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try your call again? This is a recording 6182C. We're sorry your call did not go through. Will you please hang up?
This is the Collinsville 4A's P recording. We got that because we went on to the trunk and nothing was MF'd. Collinsville is now the main outgoing toll route for Olney. Didn't used to be. Used to be Centralia, which was, in the old days, 6182.
6182C. We're sorry your call.
Nice noises. I'm going to time this. As I was saying, I'm going to time out this Olney trunk to try to get the Olney 6184 recording.
Hopefully I'll be able to get a P recording later.
Toop. Jeez, that cut-through sound. See, this is surprising me because I'm used to using Olney and Marion from the 70s when there were no 4Es, and now... Hold on a sec. As I was saying, these interfaces to the 4Es are making the cut-through sound of Olney go toop. Anyway, here's 611.
Telephone repair service.
Hello, Mr. Director. I dialed 131. That's a 3-digit code. Hello.
Directory assistant.
Interesting, I'll explain in a minute. Here's 555. Oops, looks like the directory assistant's off-hook period, possibly added to the flash that I caused afterward, was enough to make my number 1 ESS think the call completed. So 10 seconds after that, I time back to my dial tone. No problem, we'll just call again. It's an 800 number. Now 131, which is the tandem code for directory assistance, is a 3-digit code, and the director didn't know that. It actually sat there and then eventually timed out and started to put the call through. The first route was busy, and then it rerouted through something else, sending the MFs 0641131. See, in the old days, 131 would have rung directory assistance in Olney itself. But this is the early 80s, and directory assistance is getting more and more centralized. There isn't even an 064 routing code in the 618 area. So this is going to some other NPA, probably to some GTE tandem there, whose code is 064, and that tandem in another NPA handles GTE directory assistance for several different areas. Anyway, I'm going to call back and try 555-1212. What happened there is inconclusive. I did not record it again. I should have, because that MF'd 064 pause 1212. That hole in the MF sequence, at least for Olney, usually means a malfunction, so I can't trust that that was the correct thing for it to do. Anyway, this program has gotten long, but there is more Olney SF'ing. Looks like this program is early 80s program 5. I'll do some... Excuse me. Anyway, early 80s program 6 will continue the SF'ing of Olney in April 1981. Charlottesville SF'ing was from 1979, but probably would have been the same in 1981.